fourth graders, Mr. Peters here again. I'm just going to go over our quiz from last Friday with you. So Mrs. Van Epperen is making a face mask and uses 5/10 of a yard of fabric and another 3/100 yards of fabric. How much fabric has she used in all? So if you notice, I have our two fractions in here. We have 5/10 and then we have 3/100. So we are using the fabric. We're trying to figure out how much she used in all. Okay, so the math that we are doing is addition. So 5/10 plus 3/100. Now, before we add or subtract fractions, we need to make sure that we have the same denominators. Because remember, tenths and hundredths, those are the denominators, and those denominators really tell us kind of what the pieces are that we're adding together. You couldn't do 5 dogs plus 3 dogs equals 8 cat dogs. It doesn't work that way. You can't combine those things. It has to be specific steps. So we can switch tenths into hundredths. So once again, this is going back to some of the stuff that we've worked on recently. To change a fraction to an equivalent fraction, we multiply it. So the common denominator that we'll move up to is 100. So we can change our tenths into hundredths. All we have to do is multiply by 10 and multiply by 10. Okay, and I'm going to rewrite it down here. So 5 times 10 is 50. 10 times 10 is 100. Now we have 50 100ths plus 3 100ths. Okay. So now that we do have the same denominators here, now we are able to subtract. We have 50 100ths plus 3 100ths. 50 plus 3 equals 53, and it was 100th, so it was hundredths that we were working with. So that just stays the same. So it's 53 hundredths. So when we go back, we have that as one of the options. You notice on some of our other options there, you left the 8 there and the 80 there just to see if you're paying attention on it of how you're going to convert your fractions. So remember that converting the fractions and changing it to an equivalent fraction is really important. By the way, thank you to Mrs. Van Epperen for making face masks for some of her friends and families. We do really appreciate it. Question number 2, Mr. Peters, that's me, says that 8/10 is greater than 80 hundredths. Is he correct? Now, sometimes people want to read that as 0.8 or 0.80, and that's fine, but I really encourage my students to read it and say what place value you're in, because when you do that, it helps you figure out if you are correct or incorrect. So we have, am I right or am I wrong with this one? So when we look at it, we have the 0.8 or 8/10, because we're in the tenths place, and then we are looking at it and we have 80 hundredths. And I just put the lines underneath there so we can see the place value spots. So in this, I had said that 8/10 is greater than 80 hundredths. And when we look at this, tenths, once again, if you think about tenths, you can think about dimes. It takes 10 dimes to make $1. So 8/10 would be as if you had 8 dimes, which we all know 8 times 10 is 80 cents. Then our 80 hundredths, well, hundredths are like pennies because it takes 100 pennies to make $1. And so if we have 80 of them, well, if we had 80 pennies, that would be equivalent to 8 dimes. So these two are in fact equal and not greater. Now, one of the other things that you can do is that you can put a 0 at the end of the number when you have a decimal like this. You don't want to put it in front over on this side necessarily or in between here, but you can put a 0 there. And you'll see that they are in fact the same. Okay. Once again, you could put 0 there even and a 0 there. Those zeros at the end don't necessarily impact it. You just want to be careful when you put them and make sure that they're outside of your last digit that's not a 0. So, in fact, Mr. Peters was incorrect that time. It happens, we all make mistakes. Question 3, Mr. Trice uses 4/10 milliliter of his hand sanitizer on Tuesday, then another 3/10 milliliter on Wednesday. How many milliliters of hand sanitizer did he use in all? So we had 4/10, and then we have 3/10. So this part is pretty easy for us. He did 4/10 one day, and then he used another part, so we're going to add it on. And so for a total, he's at 7/10, and that measurement is milliliters. But now when we go back and look, I don't see 7/10 anywhere. So I want to go and check my work. Well, 43 hundredths, 4/10. Well, I see 70 hundredths. So right here, what we can do, once again, we can change our fraction to an equivalent one. So if we multiply by 10, multiply by 10, we will get 70 hundredths. And so that's where we got that from. The actual addition of it, that was pretty quick and easy because we have the same denominator. But then we had to convert it to hundredths. And so for us, the answer would have been 70 hundredths for that problem. Mrs. G says 3/10 is greater than 3 hundredths. Is she correct? So once again, let me set it up. There's our 3, and it's in the 10th spot. Here's our 3, and it is in the 100th spot. So once again, when we are looking at this, you could think of it a few ways. Tenths, once again, are like dimes, so you could have 3 dimes versus hundredths, which are like pennies, 3 pennies. And we all know that 3 dimes is worth more than 3 pennies. The other thing that you can do is if you put the 0 here, so you go to the same decimal spots, we have our tenths and then our hundredths on each one. This clearly shows then that we have 30 over here versus 3 over here. So Mrs. Kursmeyer would be correct in saying that 3/10 is greater than 3 hundredths. Remember, when you're making a decimal, the further you get way over to the right. So if we are doing a decimal and we go like this, the further away we get, that's where we're getting really small. The further to the left on a number, and it doesn't matter if it's a decimal or not, the further to the left, the bigger you're getting. Same thing right here. Now we got all the way over to the hundreds place. So further to the right means that we're getting smaller. Further to the left means that we're getting bigger. Mrs. Clausen needs your help. She wants to know she wants to know which number is equal to 9/10. And this is a perfect example of why I really encourage my 4th graders to read decimals and actually read it, not say point. I know even as an adult, usually I'd say 3.7 or something like that. But when you read it and you read it by the place value spot, it makes this conversion super easy. So we want to find 9/10, and we're looking for a decimal that's equivalent to it. Well, when we put our decimal point here, our tenths is right there. And we just said that we want to find something equivalent to 9/10. So we need to put a 9 here. It's in the 10ths location. So 0.9 is the same as 9/10. So our answer would be this one down here. Once again, if we were looking at these, 2 of these answers we should be able to get rid of as 4th graders right away. 9 and 90. That doesn't make any sense. Get rid of those ones. All right. Once again, if you have any questions or need any help with stuff, please reach out to your teacher. We are still here for you guys. Enjoy the short week. Enjoy the weekend. You guys have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to enjoy with your families. It looks like we're going to dry out and get a little bit of sunshine. So get outside. Help your parents with that lawn work. My guess is your yards are going to be growing like crazy. So have a great time, and we miss you guys.